Thank you so many of you for turning out today. As we know, we're here to mark the 40th anniversary of the death of Declan Flynn, and one of the things we know is that nothing is ever just one thing. So Declan's life meant different things to different people, and the legacy has impacted differently on different people. Today we're going to hear from a number of community groups who will have some things to say to us, but I think it's important that before we do that or talk about any of those different things, that we first of all remember Declan himself, and we would like to invite Declan's brother, Paul, who's going to say a few words on behalf of the family, and then the family will lay a wreath just behind us there. Paul.
Thanks very much, Jed. Thanks everybody for being here today. An emotional day for us, obviously. 40 years ago, our brother Declan was taken from us in a most violent manner. He was brutally beaten, kicked and robbed in an act of savagery that at the time was falsely portrayed as vigilantism. His killers stole his watch, his money and his life, and robbed his family of a loving son and brother. This cruelty was then compounded by Justice Sean Gannon, who disgraced himself and the legal system of the day by allowing Declan's killers to walk free with suspended sentences. His killers took their release as a vindication by the state for his killing, and they held a victory march shortly after. This added to the pain already inflicted on our family and Declan's friends. Declan faced many challenges in life, having both a stammer and learning difficulties. He was a quiet man. He loved pop music, family celebrations. He was particularly loving to his parents and to his younger brother, Greg, who had Down syndrome. He loved giving presents, and he was in his element at Christmas, when he would rarely arrive home without colourful decorations and gifts for his family. His gentle nature was in stark contrast to the brutality that abruptly ended his life. Declan's killing was an act of thuggery committed by the strong over the weak. No human being deserves to be treated with such little respect. Over the past 40 years, Declan's siblings, we have received support from our wider family and friends, and from people across the community. We realise that many gay people see his killing and the release of his killers as a turning point in their history, and we fully understand this. We know that Declan was not alone in the abuse that he suffered. To us, however, he'll always simply be our brother, a young man that was cruelly taken away and can never be given back. Ireland has progressed in many ways, and we hope that no one ever has to suffer the same savagery and uncaring legal system again. However, recent events have shown this cannot be taken for granted. Our thoughts are with all those individuals and families that have suffered at the hands of evil men, and a system that seems unable to protect the most innocent from the most violent. Thank you for remembering our brother today. Rest in peace, Declan Flynn.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you to the whole Flynn family for coming out today and for supporting this. And we have some wreaths here today, and just in the centre point there, if anyone does have any flowers that they want to leave, if they're welcome to leave them there. But yes, they say Declan family will leave them there. As we know, the legacy following Declan is regularly attributed as one of the main foundation points of our own organisation, Dublin Pride. So to speak on behalf of Dublin Pride, and also to lay a wreath on behalf of Dublin Pride and all of us, I'd like to welcome the chairperson of Dublin LGBTQ Pride, Phillippa Ryder.
Thank you, Jed, and thank you, Paul, for that touching remembrance of Declan Flynn. We're gathered here together to remember Declan, the victim of an horrific attack at this spot 40 years ago today. On behalf of Dublin Pride and the entire LGBTQ+ community, we offer our condolences to his family, some of whom are here today. Declan wasn't the only gay man murdered in Ireland. Charles Self lost his life to an attacker in January 1982. And of course, more recently, we've had the horrific murders in Sligo of Michael Snee and Aidan Muffet earlier this year. And they're just the murders. There have been so many verbal and violent physical attacks on our rainbow community, many of which go unreported. A report compiled for the Gardaí back in the early 2000s referred to how attacks on the community, our community, were increasing even at that stage. There was no mention of trans people in it. Maybe we thought everything would be rosy after the Marriage Equality Referendum and the Gender Recognition Act. But instead we have seen imported hate speech directed at our most vulnerable members, our right to exist debated on the airwaves and in the newspapers, who are as much at fault as the actual perpetrators of the crimes by sowing doubt, ridicule and raise thoughts of discrimination in the minds of their readers, listeners and viewers, witnessed by the unjustified bans on trans women participating in a number of sports. In addition, with the revoking of Roe v. Wade in the US, women's rights are also under attack here, specifically a person's right to choose, under fire as the haters here become emboldened by successes in some US states. So I would implore other marginalised groups to work with us in getting this vital hate crime legislation passed. There are very few people in Ireland contributing to this upswing in hatred. It is a right-wing ethos derived from the US and the UK and paid for by money from these groups. The vast majority of Irish society is behind us and is willing to support us. How do we stop the hatred? Through legislation, better policing, education, and visible role models. The longer we leave it, the harder it will be to combat. We need to act now. We will not stand for our rights to be debated and our bodies mutilated. We are equally as valid as any other citizen of the country, and we demand hate crime legislation, robust hate crime legislation. Not in a year, not in a month, not in a week, but now. Something has to change, and I would urge everyone here to contact their public representatives and encourage them to push for that legislation. Talk to your friends and relatives and get them to do the same. We need more research, more understanding, and for the authorities to listen to us and to take us seriously. Our very lives depend on it. If even one life is saved, one attack prevented by the legislation, then it will have been worth it. We need to fight for our rights. I'd just like to ask for a moment's silence now to remember Declan and all the victims of the horrible violence and murders recently. Thank you very much.
So we're going to hear from some of our community leaders, because obviously this has been a difficult time this year as well. And a number of the organisations are organisations that were around back at the time of Declan. It's important to remember that even back then we had a vibrant community that was supporting each other, that knew each other, that were friends of each other. So the first person we're going to hear from is Val from Dublin Lesbian Line, which is around since 1979.
Hi everyone, my name is Val Hourigan and I'm here today to mark this sad occasion on behalf of Dublin Lesbian Line. All of us at Dublin Lesbian Line extend our most heartfelt sympathies to the family and friends of Declan. Dublin Lesbian Line found its beginnings in 1979 in the Hirschfield Centre in Dublin, a place Declan regularly attended and supported during his life. Today's memorial is a timely reminder of the ongoing difficulties faced by the LGBTQ+ community here in Ireland. Declan's untimely passing was a catalyst for change in Ireland. To this very day, we continue to fight for our rights on this small island. Over the last year, attacks against the LGBTQ+ community have increased across the country. Today, we think of Aidan Moffat, Michael Snee, and all members of our community that have experienced violence and harm in Ireland in recent times. As a visibly gay person in Dublin, experiencing homophobia is starting to become a regular part of life, and I know I feel fearful in a way that I have not before walking the streets of my own city. It's not fair or okay that we have to feel like this. We also want to acknowledge the rise in attacks by the media on our trans community. This is unacceptable. The rise of the far right in Ireland is incredibly concerning, and we must stand strong and continue to speak out against this unacceptable behaviour. It's time for us to use our strength in numbers to drive for the change that Declan's death did 40 years ago. We need each other, this community, and all of our active allies more than ever, and seeing you all here today is a reminder of the support and love that we have in the face of adversity. Our power is in our support for each other, and let us use that power to fight for the rights of every member. As a unified community, let's work together to reduce hate crimes and demand that the government introduce the hate crime legislation now. Let's support and fight with all members of our community, especially those who are most at risk: trans and non-binary people, disabled people, people of colour, and members of our travelling community. Today, we grieve for the loss of Declan. We say, enough, no more. It's time we can live our lives safely and free from fear. Please look after yourselves, look after your friends, and look out for one another. Dublin Lesbian Line is committed to our community and to working to bring about the change we so desperately need. Thank you.
I don't think anyone hears stories about Declan without also hearing about the Hirschfield Centre. Next we have Oisín from Outhouse, which is the successor to Dublin's Hirschfield Centre. Oisín.
Good afternoon, everyone, and my sincere condolences to Declan's family and friends on their tragic loss 40 years ago. As many have said before, the events that have unfolded in the past 12 months that affect our community feel as though they're getting worse and worse and worse. But 40 years ago, a spark was reignited within our community with a march that ended here. And that march created a movement that has grown and grown to bring many of you here today, that has been a civilizing force in Irish society over those 40 years. But we are under attack. There are elements within the far right, as small as they are in number, they are well connected, well resourced, well financed, and they are trying to erode our rights. They are trying to bring us back 40 years. And there's a moment in time for us as a collective who believe in equality, equity in society, diversity and inclusion, to really bond together across not only the LGBT community, but women, migrants, members of the Roma and travelling community, those seeking international protection here in Ireland and otherwise, to resist this at all costs. There is a reckoning coming for us in society, and we have a choice as to whether we choose up today or not. The route forward for us can look bright if we come together. And I think that need to have conversations with our friends, our families, our loved ones, the many conversations that bound us together in two big referenda campaign in the last decade, that educated people, that expressed our emotion, how we feel, our fears, our hopes, our dreams, our anxieties, are as important, if not more so now, than they were then. Thank you all.
Now we'll hear from one of the newer LGBT organisations, from ShoutOut, Ruana.
My name is Ruana Creedon. I work with ShoutOut, and what we do is we work in schools to try and end homophobic and transphobic attitudes. We work with LGBTQ+ students as well to show them that they've got brighter futures, but we do also work with all students to try and educate them about queer history so that they know that queer people have always been here in Ireland. I actually grew up and went to school just up the road from here, and I passed this park nearly every day, but I didn't think much about it until I learned about Declan Flynn's murder. And I'm ashamed to say that I didn't learn about Declan's murder until long after I left school. And I'm more ashamed still to say that most students don't actually know about what happened here. They don't know about how Pride began. They don't know the history of the LGBTQ+ community and all of its darkness and light. Some students don't even know about the marriage equality referendum. When I did learn about what happened here in Fairview Park in 1982, it's all I thought about every time I passed these fences heading into town. For me, Fairview Park and Declan Flynn were always entwined. And I remember in particular one day 7 years ago during the marriage equality referendum, there was a small group of local canvassers and we were canvassing on the green pedestrian footbridge that stands above the park. And it was a really emotional day. We had handmade yes signs, we had banners, we had pride flags. Lots of people were beeping their horns, buses were beeping, pedestrians were cheering and waving and showing their support, and it was really uplifting to see all of that support. But we were all deeply emotional that day because we were all looking down on the park from the footbridge and we were all thinking about Declan Flynn. We were thinking about what happened to him here in 1982, and we were thinking about what his life came to mean in our history. We knew what the park represented for the LGBTQ+ community. We knew what it represented in terms of pride and the journey that began in 1982 and went on to 2015 and beyond. I think we all wished on that day that Declan Flynn could have seen how far things had come. I think we wish that he could have seen how far things had come for his LGBTQ+ community that he was a part of at the Hirschfeld Centre in Dublin. I think we wish that he could have seen how far things had come locally as well, here on the north side, here in this part of Dublin. We wish that he could have seen queer people standing openly, proudly as who we were, not ashamed to say who we were or show it to the world, asking for support from those around us and receiving that support. And I think on that day as well, we all really wish that there was a way for us to tell Declan Flynn that what we have achieved in the past 40 years couldn't have happened without him. That he was the beginning of our pride, of our fight, of allies standing with us in anger against injustice. And I wish that we could have told him that queer people today, of all ages, could ultimately live much more freely in Ireland because of him and because of what his life came to mean. Declan's life mattered then, and it still matters now. He was an important part of our community in 1982, and he will always be a keystone of our history, but the price that he paid was far too high. He should still be here. The Ireland of 1982 was one that was laced with shame and hatred, and the men who killed Declan took advantage of the shadows cast by that shame. Ireland today is different. It has come a long way, it has progressed and it has changed, but our community is still under the threat from violence, shame and fear. And all of us standing here owe Declan Flynn a debt that we can't fully repay. Our futures are built on his legacy, and what we do with those futures matters. We can honour his memory and the memory of all those harmed and killed by homophobic and transphobic violence by working to live free from shame, without fear, openly and proudly, and by passing that on through education to the next generation. We need to bring that history towards the next generation, to young people, to schools, to classes. We need to work to have that history never forgotten, so that something like this can never happen again. We've been saying that for 40 years, that something like this should never happen again. It still happens, it keeps happening. The only way forward is through that education, to ensuring that nobody forgets what happened to Declan Flynn, what happened to Ada Moffat, what happened to Michael Snee, and that they know that they should stand up for and can stand up for their LGBTQ+ community, friends and family. Thank you.
Next up, from our national LGBT support and advocacy agency, LGBT Ireland, we have Colette.
Hi everybody, it's very emotional to be here. All of people who've spoken before, you've said such important words. I'm here just on behalf of LGBT Ireland. Paula Fagan, our CEO, just couldn't make it, and on behalf of all of us who work in LGBT Ireland, to the Flynn family, we just want to extend our sympathies. And I watched the documentary during the week, and I suppose really while we all know Declan as that catalyst moment, I really heard you say so strongly he was our brother. And from now on, I think I'll always think of Declan first as a brother, and then as what he means to us. And thank you for being here and, you know, sharing your brother with us. I know everybody has mentioned the other families who are grieving at a much earlier stage of their grief than the Flynn family, sadly this year in Sligo, and we extend our sympathies and solidarity to them. I guess everybody, you know, the key things have been said. For me, I was 14 years old in 1982. I was very much living that secret, shameful life, knowing who I was since even, you know, since a 10-year-old or whatever, and knowing I can never talk to anybody about that. And I hope nobody ever guesses or gets a clue. How do I disguise it? How do I, all of that. So I'm so grateful that I've, you know, lived through the incredible changes that have happened in Ireland, and I think we have to hold on to that. You know, no matter the terrible threats that are very, very real, we really have to keep the colours of our achievements very, very visible, because that's where we'll get our hope. And we'll get our strength and our courage to do what our generation and our age groups, whatever we can do, in our organisations, in our families, in our community networks, in our workplaces. This is really where we're at now. We need the systems to change. We need the laws to change. We need the systems to change. We need the institutions to change. And until that happens, we will have to keep working together and advocating. So friends, for LGBT Ireland, we run as you know, there are a lot of frontline support services here today. So just, you know, reach out to the National LGBT Helpline. You'll find all the details on lgbt.ie. This year and today will shake people up. So reach out and get the support that you need. But, you know, thank you for holding up hope, Eddie. That's exactly, I guess, what today is about. If we don't have hope, we can never overcome the challenges that we, at this stage in 2022, need to overcome. But friends, there are some people from our political class here today. I think I just want to speak to them and say that, you know, as was mentioned by previous speakers, we need that hate crime law. The Gardaí need that hate crime law. So that has to happen this year. It just has to. Apart from that, though, we need to remember that no matter how difficult things are becoming in Ireland, and they are becoming, there is the concerted far right, we cannot sleepwalk into, you know, going backwards. We have to remain alert and vigilant. Nonetheless, Ireland is a beacon of hope to many parts of the world for LGBT+ people. They have seen a country really transform. It was, I think, Tony Walsh in the documentary that was on this week who said, you know, as a gay man in the 80s, he felt like he was living under the Taliban. I mean, our country was not a democracy, it was not a republic, it was a theocracy, you know, so we have shirked a lot of that off, thankfully. God, I was going to say thank God, we shouldn't say that, but anyway, that's how deep it goes, folks. But, you know, we've got bits of that to get rid of yet, but I guess what I want to say is that, you know, the Taliban is back in Afghanistan. And there are versions of the Taliban in so many countries of our world. The world remains a very, very hostile place for LGBT+ people. So, you know, to our government, I want to say that you have to, you know, create more spaces in Ireland for those seeking international protection. We'll continue to fight for protection for people already in Ireland, but we need more people to get to Ireland and to get to Europe, you know, because the small, fledgling, brave activists in those countries need their time to build up their organisations. It's, you know, so I guess that's really, I want to fly the flag. I have two of my Afghan friends here today, Basira and Matin, and I just couldn't not mention the struggles, and there are many others that LGBT Ireland works with from different parts of the world, and it's just really important that we keep them in mind as well. And I'm sure that the Flynn family don't mind me kind of bringing that to today's discussion. So folks, I think that's really what we want to say, and thanks to Dublin Pride for organising today. Thank you.
Years ago, homosexuality in Ireland was a criminal offence. In fact, even 30 years ago, it was a criminal offence. And many people who would have been friends and contemporaries of Declan have had to live with convictions against them that have never been overturned. To speak about this and the campaign to disregard those convictions, Brian Sheehan.
Thanks, Jed, and can I join with everybody else here and all the speakers in offering my sympathy and deep respect to Declan's family. It's a very sad reason that we're here, but it's really brilliant that his memory continues to inspire us all. I'm here to speak, as Jed said, about a disregard scheme. The colonial laws that criminalised gay men were carried over and vigorously imposed by the new state 100 years ago. Those laws buttressed generations of political and religious bigotry that created the atmosphere in which the appalling murder of Declan happened and in which the equally appalling prosecution occurred. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men were prosecuted under those laws until they were repealed in 1993. The state apologised for those laws in 2018. However, that's not enough. As Jed says, many, many people carried the stain of a human rights abuse of that kind of a prosecution. Shortly, the government will launch a public consultation about the disregard scheme, and in order for it to be as wide and as deep as possible, to include as many people as possible, we need a large response. We will send out further information over time. However, there's a parallel piece of work. Many, many, many thousands of people were impacted by those same laws, even though they weren't prosecuted. Many were forced to emigrate. Many lesbian and bisexual women lost access to their children in the family courts. Many trans people were prosecuted under public order laws. Many very young people were sent to juvenile detention. Each of these is a human rights abuse. But as others have said, we need to capture and own and document and account for our histories, our stories, our experiences of a state that was hostile to us. It is only if we do that that we can build the advocacy, the dynamism, the political will and the public support to address the issues that are still vibrantly needing addressing, from hate crimes to public safety to anti-conversion therapies, isn't that the right word? Yes. Those are issues that we still need to address. So when you see this coming across your desk soon, please respond, please engage, and make sure that the disregard scheme, that we can remember and honour those people who went before us, whose lives were ruined by those criminal laws and by how they're implemented by the state. Thank you.